The golden hour protocol says acknowledge the crisis within minutes of awareness. Now, some people will ask, what if we don't really know what the situation is? Tell people you don't know what the situation is. Is that not transparency? This is what we know so far. Once you hear of a crisis, obviously you know something. This is what we know so far. Now, we don't know all. Obviously, people are going to have questions, but you don't have the answers. But to acknowledge that there's a crisis is your number one. You know they say an ostrich burying his head in the sand, right? To not communicate within the first 1 hour is to allow the crisis go out of control. Express concern. Express concern, whatever it is, express concern. Now, when the crisis happens, you know I mentioned stakeholder, right? We'll talk about stakeholder mapping later. Express concern. Now, to express concern does not mean that sometimes you can't solve all the problems that people are having, right? But to show concern means that I know what you are feeling. That's actually empathy. I know how it feels to be in your shoes. Now, sometimes that can almost be said, and the people will respond, you don't know. You don't know, eh? But to express the concern, I know how you feel. Or I understand. If you don't use the word I know, I know means that I felt how you feel. I understand how you feel is to acknowledge that, oh, whatever concern people are having, you are acknowledging it as a concern. 3, share verified facts only. You don't have to say everything. I think I've emphasized that a number. You don't have to say everything. Share what you know that has been verified. Okay, let me just mention the case of airline that disappeared, right? Verified facts at that point in time, within the first 1 hour, was when was the aircraft last seen on radar? You know, radar communication. When was it last seen? Before, you know, aircraft disappear from radar sometimes. When was it last seen before it disappeared? That is a verified fact that they knew. How many people were on board? They knew that. Where was the plane coming from? Where was it going to? They knew. Who was the pilot? You know, some of the things people were scrutinizing at that time. Who was the pilot? Who was the first officer? That's the second pilot. What are their experience? Interestingly, the pilot of this Malaysia Airlines was a very experienced pilot that had very clean track record. You know, all of those information, they are verified facts. You know your pilot. You put those information and then the ones that are not verified, simply tell people that there are some information that are not verified. Your crisis team, your crisis team is working round the clock. Once we have further information, we would inform you. Now, when you say inform, you may not be able to always address a press conference every 24 hours. At the beginning, you should. A major crisis like an airplane crash that has 300 and something people on board, you should. But if you cannot address your other channels of communication, a tweet can say something that was not said in the press conference 24 hours ago. 12 hours later, a new information that you think is important for the people to know, put it out in a tweet. Because if you don't put it out, other people will put out anything they like. So, now, establish channels. Because I said, activate your crisis team. Establish channels. Now, channels means how do you communicate with people? Now, press conference is one of them. But if you can't do that too often, your social media handles are not that. Email is something else. And of course, text message is something. But like I said at the beginning, don't use text message to inform people that your father that flew with us is gone. No, don't. It's not. Minimum standard for the airline industry is a phone call. For France Air that we're talking about, they went to the houses individually. Except people that didn't have nest of kin in France. They had officials go there to read the news and also commiserate with the people. So number one, golden hour protocol. It says acknowledge within me. Now this golden hour says within the first 1 hour you should do this. If you miss that first 1 hour, your story may already be viral before you catch up. So what will happen is, instead of you controlling the narrative, you'll be playing catch up. People would have told the story. And verified AI-generated images, Sometimes I wonder, personally, why people just sit down and create a story that is a lie and just put it outside. I personally wonder, you just cook up or a plane disappeared. You just go take the picture of a plane that crashed in 1982. You know, you that is starting the story, know it was 1982, right? You that is starting the story, you know. You say this is the wreckage of the plane. It's been found in Ikotun in Lagos. And you put it out there, and people keep sharing the story that, oh, the plane, the wreckage has been found in Ikotun, because the person who is sharing does not know. It's maybe after 24 hours, or if you are not proactive, that's what we'll say. This particular picture was used in 1982. It happened in 1982, and I wonder, I'm not even talking about the company that is not responding proactive. They have their problem. We are trying to address that. But I'm thinking of the person who just generates a lie. Let's see. Why?
Clickbait. You want people to, the more eyeballs you have on your page, the more money you're able to make.
And some people, they enjoy other people's misery.
So it could be for several reasons. It could also be maybe a competitor who is trying to ensure that this thing that's happened.
The crisis escalates.
Yes, it buries them.
Okay, there are some jobs I can't do. Some jobs I can't do. I can't be a bearer of bad news in that sense now. Okay, so number 2, stakeholder-centric communication. Now you have 3 stakeholders. I'll talk about them. 3 stakeholders. Your primary stakeholders need detailed, immediate and detailed information about the situation. Immediate and detailed. Those are your primary stakeholders. Okay, so if it's in the case of the drug, Tylenol, your suppliers are primary stakeholders because they still have your product, right? The people who use the product are primary stakeholders. Your regulators, in Nigerian case, NAFDAC, are primary stakeholders. So they need immediate and then, of course, detailed information. Secondary stakeholders, they require less immediate update. Now, secondary stakeholders include media. Media are going to carry your story as one of the many stories. You are not the only thing in the world. It doesn't even matter whether 100 people die. There's no day you open the news and there's only one story in the news. Yeah. So those ones are not they are not your primary stakeholders because in some way the thing is not affecting them directly. Yeah. Somebody said something of a news anchor some time ago and said the person reported a case of one of these kidnapping and adoption somewhere in the north, I think it was Borno, reported it and was smiling. Well, I think the person reported it and the next news item was the Arise News program, right? Ojobe. She says carries some news. She has a good news report. Those other funny things she likes to report. So let's say it's just finished and then was smiling. I understand the person's outrage, but the thing with newscasting, if you know, it's supposed to be professional. I've seen her cry on TV once. Ojobe, I've seen her cry. One situation, she cried on TV. But in their journalism ethics, you are not supposed to cry. You're supposed to keep, when they call it straight face. Oh, Nigeria made 100 million from oil. Straight. You will not say, yay, hallelujah. No, straight face. We lost 100 people in Borno. Straight face. That's what they say. But I've seen a couple of newscasts that actually become emotional. So they don't be emotional. So if she moved from that story to another story, because she's not directly involved in the last story, even though it touched her, the main story is a rejoicing story, so she should smile. So media are not your primary stakeholders. They will report the news, but does it affect them directly? No. If it did affect them directly, they would report it differently. So they become primary stakeholders. Now, your tertiary stakeholders are like your competitors, who are not, they are more like bystanders watching the situation unfold. So your communication is not directly addressed to them, they get whatever information they get it from what you are addressing to your primary stakeholders and secondary stakeholders. Now, secondary stakeholders, that's why when things like this happen, companies do a press release and send, first they invite media and they read it, then the text of their release, they mail it to media houses. So that when Guardian newspaper is reporting the story, they can quote the organization. If not, they can say anything they like. But when you send them your detail of your communication, they cannot. Some newspaper houses, they publish the entire speech. So you are hearing from the, let's say the horse's mouth, right? So they are not misquoting you. They just put everything out the way it is. So that's stakeholder-centric communication. Now, I said something about stakeholder mapping earlier. Depending on the industry where you play and depending on the situation you are facing, you have different stakeholders. Now, in your pre-planning, pre-crisis planning, you must be able to identify who your stakeholders are. Now, your crisis team must also understand the changing dynamics of stakeholders. There's a point in time where A, B, C, D are your stakeholders, but there can be a change somewhere. You suddenly discover that A is not your primary stakeholder anymore. At this point in time, somebody else now become. If the matter can, some certain matters can come to a point where your security agencies become primary stakeholders. Because imagine the Johnson and Johnson case. People died, right? Somebody deliberately tampered the product. There's a criminal investigation. If it was a case of overdose, an agency like NAFDAC can handle it, drug abuse, overdose. Police don't get involved in that as much. But when somebody tampers a drug with cyanide deliberately and people die, you know there will be criminal investigation. So suddenly, when you are addressing your stakeholders, in the other case, you just can do Erisco tomato paste. Police were not supposed to be stakeholders. He would have just spoken to his customers on social media and left it there. But arresting the woman, police now became stakeholders. The court has now become stakeholders. So your stakeholder mapping is to know who and who is important that you should communicate to, and you should take their communication need into consideration when you are planning your communication and then when you are putting out your communication. And it doesn't matter which strategy you are, which channel you are using for your communication. So, well, okay, number 3 for crisis communication strategies, multi-channel integration strategy. Now, there were those days that everything you wanted people to hear, it went through television and radio or the newspaper. That's what we call traditional media. TV, newspaper, radio. That was traditional media. But these days, it's beyond that now.
No, it's better.
Even billboards. You know, when people put out billboards, I say, wow, this is quite some money. There were those days that you wanted people to know about anything. You have a show, it must be on billboard. I assume that most people shows on billboard. Okay, because they are communicating to different people. Maybe billboard. Is billboard still very effective?
Yes,
I think it is.
It is.
For certain communication. But you know that we've gone beyond traditional media and gone to digital platforms.
Like these campaigns now, you have to make billboards, you make all these.
Now, when we say multi-channel integration, you should know what works for your audience. We say audience-centric, right?
Yeah.
What works for your audience, and so depending on whatever you are communicating. Now, for a company, for example, addressing a press conference is something very powerful because during the business report, there are people who don't bother about the news. It's that business segment they want to hear. So during the business report, your press conference might show up there, right? So traditional media has its place. The Guardian on Saturday will carry your fashion house. If you do a women empowerment fashion program, you should call the Guardian, right? On Saturday.
Or this style.
So you know who, do you know there are some people, I haven't seen this style in a while. Is it still there?
Okay.
Yeah, that insert, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't even seen newspaper in a while. Hasma, when last did you read newspaper?
I can't remember, but it's always in our office.
But you don't read it.
No.
Okay, interesting. I think it's government offices that still buy newspaper religiously. When I was growing up, my dad bought newspaper.
Yes, my dad
My dad still buys.
Vanguard and he sticks to that one. Always Vanguard.
Things have changed though. My dad bought newspaper every day.
Yes.
On Saturday, he will buy two. He just don't know the newspaper vendor. He will go there to buy himself, or he will send you to go buy the newspaper, and he will sit and read, and then he will make you read. It was a bit cumbersome, but after a while, he will make you read. He will read and tell you what you read, that kind of thing. Things have changed a little, but newspapers still have their market. Television has its market, radio has, even though we call them traditional media, they are not obsolete. Depending on who you want to communicate to, you should go to Berekete. There are some people you want to reach. If you go to Nigerian Info, you won't reach them. You should go to Berekete. If somebody slaps you in a way you don't like, you know where to go to them. If you go to Ray Power, they will ask you, did you just release an album? No.
Cool FM.
Cool FM. Did you just release an album? No. Do you have a show? No. Somebody slapped you. Go to Berekete. So each, depending on the audience you are communicating to, use digital platform, of course, and also do internal communication. That reminds me of what Essay said. Essay, what's internal communication? We'll talk about it soon. For an organization, what's internal communication?